And as soon as I walked out of there, I went in the bathroom and I threw up. And just laid on the floor for like 30 minutes. His mama came in there and cleaned me up.
We've all seen the headlines, the memes, the endless clips of Snoop Dogg laughing through a haze of smoke, the man who turned relaxation into a brand and made millions telling the world to just chill. But what we didn't see, what no one outside that Diamond Bar mansion knew, was the night in early 2025 when the unshakable legend wasn't laughing at all. When his own daughter, Corey Broaddus, found him convulsing on the kitchen floor, his body betraying him after what insiders now describe as a near-fatal reaction to substances far stronger than the product he spent decades selling. This isn't just another celebrity health scare. This is the moment the carefully curated myth of Snoop Dogg, the eternal cool uncle of hip-hop, the man who survived gang wars, criminal trials, and industry betrayals, nearly collapsed under the weight of his own past. And it's his youngest child, the one who's already fought her own battles with illness and trauma, who's forcing the world to look at the cracks in the foundation.
She stepped up as my wife and handled that. And there's been many times where I've been at my lowest, and she's always been the strongest to get me back up to like, get back out there. You gotta get back out there and do what you do. Don't worry about what's happening over here. I'm gonna handle that.
Let's be clear about what we know. On a quiet Sunday evening inside the sprawling $2.7 million estate he's owned since the late 90s, the 54-year-old icon suffered what multiple sources confirm was a severe medical episode tied to substance use. Paramedics were called. The scene, as Corey later described in raw, unfiltered Instagram posts that have since been deleted, was one of chaos. Her father unresponsive, machines beeping, a family suddenly confronted with the reality that the man who'd cheated fate so many times might not cheat it again. By the time he reached the hospital, the damage was done. Organ strain, neurological risks. A man who'd built an empire on the idea of effortless highs now fighting for stability in an ICU bed, his vitals erratic, his recovery anything but guaranteed. Doctors, we've learned, warned of potential long-term effects, brain function, memory, the very things that made Snoop the sharp, quick-witted entertainer he's been for decades. And yet, even as the medical reports piled up, the public relations machine kicked in, statements were carefully worded. A minor health setback. Recuperating with family. But Corey's voice cut through the spin. In interviews and since deleted social media rants, she didn't mince words. This wasn't just a scare. This was the culmination of years of private struggles, a pattern of behavior that had been hidden behind studio sessions, brand deals, and that ever-present smile. Now, let's talk about the contradictions, because they're impossible to ignore. Here's a man who spent the better part of 3 decades as the face of herb culture, launching his own line in 2023, joking about his daily habits and interviews, even turning his love for the plant into a multi-million-dollar lifestyle brand. But the substances that allegedly put him in the hospital that night? They weren't the ones he's been selling. Industry insiders, the kind who've worked behind the scenes on his projects, tell us this has been a long time coming. That the laid-back persona was always just that, a persona. The real story, they say, goes back to the streets of Long Beach, to the years before the fame, when a young Calvin Broaddus wasn't just smoking. He was dealing. He was surviving. And the habits formed in those days, the ones that helped him escape the violence of his neighborhood, never fully disappeared. Even after the criminal trial acquittal in 1996, even after the Grammy nominations and the Super Bowl performances, the old demons lingered. Arrests for possession at airports, rumors of harder indulges during studio sessions. And now, in 2025, with his body finally pushing back, we're seeing the cost of a lifetime of pushing limits.
I consider my rap as a conversation more or less than a rap, because if you take the music off and just listen to my words, it's like I'm conversating with you rather than screaming and hollering over the music.
But here's where the story gets even darker, because this isn't just about Snoop. It's about the family that's had to live with the fallout. Corey Broaddus, now 26, has spent her life in the shadow of her father's fame and his struggles. Diagnosed with lupus at just 6 years old, she's faced her own health battles, including a stroke in early 2024 and a harrowing pregnancy complication that forced her to deliver her first child at just 25 weeks. She's spoken openly about mental health crises, about the pressure of growing up Broaddus, about the way her father's public persona clashed with the private man she knew, and now, in the wake of this overdose, she's the one forcing the conversation. Her posts didn't just describe a medical emergency, they painted a picture of a family in crisis, of siblings who've had to call each other in the middle of the night too many times, of a mother, Shante Broaddus, Snoop's wife of 27 years, who's had to hold everything together while the world sees only the glamour. This isn't the first time the Broaddus household has faced this kind of scare, insiders tell us, but it's the first time the public is being forced to see it. And then there's the mansion itself, that Diamond Bar estate that's supposed to be a sanctuary, but has instead become a symbol of something far more complicated. Purchased in 1998 for just over $700,000, it's now worth nearly $3 million, a sprawling 6-bedroom compound with a pool, a home theater, a basketball court, every amenity money can buy. But money, as we've seen time and again, doesn't erase trauma. The same walls that hosted legendary parties have also witnessed private meltdowns. The same pool where Snoop's grandkids splash around has reflected the face of a man who's stared down more close calls than most of us can imagine. This is where he came home after the 1993 criminal charge that could have landed him in prison for life. This is where he retreated after the 2006 airport arrest, the 2007 weapons charge, the endless cycle of legal troubles that never seemed to stick but never really went away either. And now, in 2025, it's where his daughter found him on the floor, where the myth of invincibility finally cracked.
I ride like this the whole flight, hoping one of them come with me so I could stab at everybody on this mother.
We can't talk about this moment without talking about the past, because Snoop Dogg's life has been a series of narrow escapes. Born Calvin Cortazar Broadus Jr. in 1971, he was abandoned by his biological father at just 3 months old, left to be raised by a single mother in one of the toughest neighborhoods in Long Beach. By his teens, he was deep in the Crips, selling, stealing, doing whatever it took to survive. He's spoken about the fear that defined those years. The fear of being shot, the fear of prison, the fear of ending up like so many others who didn't make it out. And then, just as he was recording his debut album, The Criminal Charge, Philip Woldemariam, a 20-year-old gang rival, shot in the back. Snoop in the driver's seat. A trial that dragged on for years, a verdict that could have destroyed him. He walked free, but not unchanged. The man who emerged from that courtroom in 1996 wasn't the same kid who'd been arrested in 1993. He was harder, warier, and according to those who knew him, more reliant on the substances that numbed the memories.
I say a week before we was best of friends. 2 days before he died, I don't think he liked me.
The irony? Snoop's always been the one to joke about his own mortality. In interviews, he'd laugh off questions about his lifestyle, quipping that he'd outlive us all. But the people closest to him knew the truth, that the laughter was a shield, that the herb empire was a distraction, that the man who'd built a career on being unbreakable was, in fact, deeply broken. And now, with Corey's revelations, the world is seeing what the family has known for years, that the Snoop Dogg persona, the chill, the humor, the effortless cool, was never the full story. It was the story he wanted us to believe. The reality? A man who spent a lifetime running from the past, only to have it catch up with him in the one place he thought was safe. But here's the question we have to ask now. If this overdose was the breaking point, what else has been hidden behind those mansion walls? Because the Broadus family's struggles don't exist in a vacuum. They're tied to decades of industry pressures, to the violence of Snoop's early years, to the legal battles that never really ended. They're tied to the way fame warps reality, to the way money can buy silence, to the way a man who survived so much can still be brought to his knees by the things he thought he'd left behind. And as Corey continues to speak out, as the medical reports trickle in, as the public finally starts to see the man behind the myth, we're left wondering, how many more secrets are buried in that Diamond Bar estate? How many more nights like this one have played out in private? And if Snoop Dogg, the man who's always landed on his feet, is truly fighting for his life now, what does that mean for the legacy he spent 30 years building? The answers, it seems, are locked behind those gates. And for the first time, the key isn't in his hands.
I have never seen, until Kendrick now, I'd never seen anybody from where I'm from, the area I'm from, the place I'm from, do what Snoop did.
Now, let's pull back the curtain on the family trauma Corey alleges, because what we're seeing isn't just a single terrifying night in 2025. It's the culmination of a pattern that stretches back to Snoop's earliest days in Long Beach, where survival meant embracing a lifestyle that never truly let go. Critics and insiders alike point to a cycle that began in those gang-filled streets, where a young Calvin Broadus wasn't just selling candy and bagging groceries to help his mother. He was learning the rules of a world where power came from fear, where loyalty was measured in bullets and silence, and where the line between life and tragedy was thinner than a razor's edge. The same streets that shaped his music also shaped his demons, and those demons, according to sources close to the family, never really left the room. They just got more expensive suits and better hiding places. Corey's emotional outburst wasn't just about one overdose. It was about decades of watching her father flirt with disaster, of private interventions that failed, of a family that's had to perfect the art of looking the other way when the cameras weren't rolling. While Snoop has spent years crafting an image of effortless cool, joking about his habits, turning his love for certain substances into a lucrative brand, those who've worked behind the scenes tell a different story. One former road manager, who spoke on condition of anonymity, claims that the 2025 incident wasn't an isolated scare, but the latest in a series of close calls that have been quietly managed for years. He's always been able to laugh it off, the source says, but there were times when the team had to step in, when things got out of hand. And it wasn't just the stuff he talks about publicly. The implication? That the carefully curated persona of the chill, herb-loving uncle of hip-hop has long been a smokescreen for something far more volatile. And Corey's decision to speak out isn't just about her father's health, it's about the toll it's taken on the entire family. Shantae Broadus, Snoop's wife of 27 years, has reportedly been the glue holding things together, the one who's had to make the calls, smooth over the incidents, and keep the household running while the world saw only the highlight reel. But even she, insiders say, has reached a breaking point. The question now isn't just whether Snoop will recover, it's whether the family can.
Well, she just a strong black woman, off the tippy. You know what I'm saying? Like,
And then there's the matter of the industry itself, because Snoop Dogg's rise from the streets of Long Beach to global superstardom didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in an environment where the pressures of fame, the demands of the music business, and the lingering shadows of his past all collided in ways that, according to those who've worked with him, made relapse almost inevitable. Consider the timeline: the criminal trial in the 90s, the legal battles that followed, the constant scrutiny of being a gangsta rap icon in a world that both glorified and vilified that image. Snoop has always walked a tightrope between his street credentials and his mainstream appeal, between the man who survived a criminal charge and the man who hosts cooking shows with Martha Stewart. But that balancing act, sources suggest, came at a cost. The same resilience that made him a survivor also made him a master of compartmentalization, able to bury the trauma deep enough to keep performing, keep recording, keep smiling for the cameras. Until, of course, the body says enough. What's perhaps most chilling about Corey's revelations is how they echo the broader narrative of Snoop's life. A narrative that's always been about beating the odds, only to find that the odds have a way of catching up. Take his early years, for example. Abandoned by his biological father at 3 months old, raised by a single mother in a neighborhood where gang affiliation wasn't just common, it was a rite of passage. By his teens, he was deep in the Crips, selling, stealing, doing whatever it took to survive. And then, just as he was on the verge of something bigger, the 1993 criminal charge that could have ended it all, he beat that too. Acquitted in 1996, he walked out of that courtroom a free man, but not a changed one. The habits that had kept him alive on the streets, the hypervigilance, the distrust, the need to numb the fear, didn't just disappear because he had a record deal. If anything, the fame amplified them. The money, the access, the endless supply of distractions made it easier to keep the past at bay. But as Corey's account suggests, the past has a way of resurfacing, especially when the body starts to give out.
This is a 5.5-hour flight. Don't nobody say one word to me. Not one word. Having conversations and doing all kinds of things, saying nothing to me.
And let's not forget the role of Death Row Records in all of this, because Snoop's time under Suge Knight's infamous label wasn't just a career launchpad, it was a crash course in the dark side of the industry. Knight's empire was built on a mix of genius and brutality, and Snoop, as one of its brightest stars, was both a beneficiary and a casualty of that world. The label's collapse, the loss of Shakur, the betrayals and legal battles that followed, all of it left scars. Snoop has spoken openly about the toll those years took on him, about the way the violence and paranoia of that era shaped his outlook. But what he hasn't talked about, at least not publicly, is how those scars might have contributed to the patterns we're seeing now. The substances, the relapses, the near misses. They weren't just personal failures. They were coping mechanisms for a man who'd seen too much, lost too much, and been expected to keep performing as if none of it mattered.
You know, when it comes to rewriting history, it's trying to rewrite history.
Then there's the question of legacy, because Snoop Dogg isn't just a rapper. He's a brand, a cultural icon, a man who's transcended hip-hop to become a household name. And that kind of status comes with its own set of pressures. The need to maintain the image, to keep the myth alive, to never let the public see the cracks. But Corey's decision to speak out has blown that myth wide open, forcing the world to confront the reality behind the persona. This isn't just about one man's struggles. It's about the cost of fame, the price of survival, and the way the entertainment industry chews up even its brightest stars. Snoop's alleged overdose isn't just a personal tragedy. It's a symptom of a system that demands everything from its icons and gives little in return. And as we dig deeper, we can't ignore the whispers about what else might be lurking beneath the surface. Insiders suggest that Snoop's health scare is just the latest in a series of red flags that the family has been dealing with for years. There are rumors of past interventions, of moments when things got so bad that even his inner circle feared the worst. One source, a former collaborator who worked with Snoop in the early 2000s, claims that there were multiple instances where his behavior became erratic, where the substances took over and the man behind the myth disappeared. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion, the source says. You'd see him spiral and then he'd pull it back together just in time, but each time it got harder. If that's true, then the 2025 overdose isn't just a wake-up call. It's the moment when the train finally went off the rails.
We got a lot of money, but it may not have been what we're supposed to have. On No Limit Records.
But perhaps the most damning aspect of all this is the way Snoop's public persona has clashed with the private reality. Here's a man who's built an empire on the idea of relaxation, of taking it easy, of living life at your own pace. And yet, behind closed doors, the story has been anything but chill. The seizures, the hospital stays, the frantic calls in the middle of the night, none of it aligns with the image of the laid-back legend. And that disconnect, that gap between the myth and the reality, is what makes Corey's revelations so explosive. Because if Snoop Dogg, the man who's survived everything from gang wars to criminal trials to industry betrayals, can be brought to his knees by the very things he spent his life glorifying, what does that say about the rest of us? What does that say about the culture that's allowed this to happen? As we piece together the fragments of this story, one thing becomes painfully clear. The Snoop Dogg we thought we knew was always a carefully constructed illusion. The man behind the myth is far more complicated, far more fragile, and far more human. And now, with his daughter forcing the world to see the truth, the question isn't just whether he'll recover. It's whether the legend can survive the reality. Because for decades, Snoop Dogg has been the man who beats the odds, who walks away from disaster with a smile and a new hit single. But this time, the disaster isn't something he can outrun. It's inside him. And if the rumors are true, if the family struggles run as deep as Corey suggests, then this might not be just another chapter in the Snoop Dogg story. It might be the moment when the whole narrative unravels. So here's what we're left with. A man clinging to life in a hospital bed, a family grappling with decades of buried pain, and an industry that's always been more interested in the myth than the man. The overdose might be the headline, but the real story is about what happens when the facade cracks, when the legend can't outshine the truth. And as Corey continues to speak out, as more details emerge, we have to ask ourselves, how many more secrets are hiding in plain sight? How many more families are living the same nightmare behind closed doors? And if Snoop Dogg, one of the most resilient figures in entertainment history, can be brought this low, what does that say about the rest of us? Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think Snoop's alleged overdose is the beginning of a larger reckoning, or just another chapter in a life defined by survival? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next bombshell. Because in a world where legends are made and broken in an instant, the truth is always just one headline away. Stay curious, stay bold, and we'll see you in the next one.